Welcome back to Royals Weekly. I am your host, Marcus Mead, and joining me as always, the intellectual equivalent of three kids stacked in a trench coat, my brother Mike.
Three kids, okay? Three kids, you combine those IQs, I'm way the hell up there.
Is that how you do it?
Way
One
the hell
plus
up there.
one plus
And if
one plus
I've
the other?
seen the movies right, that always works, okay?
That's my
So
point. That's kind of the
they
point
get-
of the whole thing.
They get into every R-rated movie. They get in, I am the intellectual equivalent of three toddlers or young kids stacked in a trench coat. You wish you could be that.
You know what? I was trying to think to myself, what's the metaphor I'm going for here? And for some reason, it feels perfect, but I can't really say why. I think it's because of the notion that, you have many components, but all of them are extremely simple. There's three things going on in his mind, but they're all real simple.
That's
real
right.
simple.
I tell my wife that. I say, hey, this is how life should be. Extremely simple, just like what I got going on up here. Okay? Don't complicate things. Three simple things, do them all well.
Don't ask him to do long division. Do not ask him to do long division. No. Okay, he has remainders. That's all he's getting. That's the
leftovers.
He's gotten to.
Remainders.
Leftovers. Mike calls them leftovers.
I call them leftovers. Whatever. I didn't go to your fancy schools. Okay,
we went to the same schools. Okay,
you went to a couple more than I did.
That's true. Too much fun. Too many ha-has. Let's get into the business here. We got a lot of business.
Get into the boo-hoos.
Well, welcome back. It's been a while. It's been like a month since we had an episode, but frankly, we have missed virtually nothing. I mean, a very worthy month to take off. And nothing happens during this time. There's a reason. Everybody needs a break every now and again. And so we're happy to be back after a month. On this week's episode, we're gonna talk a little bit about the Michael Wacha extension. Didn't get a chance to cover that. It happened after our last episode, though we have been talking about all this stuff on the midweek episodes for Royal Substack subscribers. So become a paid Royals Weekly Substack subscriber. You get an extra episode every single week. We've been putting that out for listeners. We're in a 4-part series right now where we're talking about how the Royals might improve their roster this offseason, covering the free agent market and hitters, starting pitchers, relievers. We're talking about trades for one of those episodes. It's a lot of fun. So join us over there. I'm putting out a thing every week. An article every week as well. So that's going well. We're going to discuss that Michael Wacha extension. We're going to discuss the rumors about a certain Royals starting pitcher and the potential that he might be traded. But first, we have an Apple Podcast review to give you here. Thank you so much for those of you who leave us reviews on Apple Podcasts. We really like reading them here on the show. So make sure you follow this person's example and leave us an Apple Podcast review. This is from someone calling themselves Turbo Fanatic. Turbo Fanatic, thank you so much for leaving this. And the headline for this review is just recommended with an exclamation point. So this person is emphatic in their recommendation of us, which is great. It says, Royals Weekly is informative, approachable, and entertaining. Marcus and Mike know their stuff. Their love for the Kansas City Royals, the sport of baseball, and each other shines through in every episode. Mike, our love for each other shines through in every episode.
Are we sure this person's a listener?
I know. I mean, I get the stuff of us loving the Royals. Yeah, that comes through very obviously, but each other? All right, we'll see. It says, keep up the great work, fellas, and go Royals. Turbo Fanatic, we cannot, I'm going to review your review. You get 5 stars on your review.
Because that was the writing was just top.
This is top. This is way better than you normally see. Maybe it's one of my students. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's really great, top-notch review. Be like Turbo Fanatic. Go out there and review us on Apple Podcasts. Give us 5 stars, all the different places you can. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC and MMA. Head to Bet Online today and get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online, the game starts here. All right, let's dig into that Michael Wacha contract a little bit. If you don't know the news, here's the headlines. Michael Wacha signed a 3-year extension for $51 million, which breaks down to roughly $17 million a year, with a $14 million team option on a 4th year. So they're definitely going to have him for 3 more years. Could have him for a 4th year if they feel like he's still performing. And to give you some insights, $14 million would be pretty cheap if he's even a league average pitcher at that point. So, Mike, what are your thoughts on this Michael Wacha deal? Were the Royals wise to make it? Should they have moved on from him? What are your thoughts?
I like it. He brought exactly what we needed to this rotation, and I think he can still bring that. we weren't expecting maybe the numbers that we saw from him this year, which were outstanding. But if he even can do, you know, anything close to what he got to this year for the price that we're paying, that's really good value. And so it's not only makes sense value wise to me, that $14 million extra year is just a bonus. If he's still kicking it and still doing well, you just got yourself a steady hand for another year for pennies on the dollar. And so I think the consistency that he provides just really maximizes that money.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, and just because, in my mind, 17 million a year might be just the slightest of overpays. I see Waka, because of the injury risk associated with him. He has had quite a few injuries throughout the course of his year, as maybe a $15 million pitcher, not so much a $17 million a year pitcher. But you're really splitting hairs at that point, and on the open market, he's probably bound to get somewhere in the $17 million range. So I get it, and I get the sense that, like, even if they wanted to like let him walk and go, they would have to probably sign someone else, or they'd have to settle on keeping Brady Singer or something like that. And so ultimately, they're probably just more comfortable going with the guy they know. They know Michael Wacha. They know what he's going to put into it. They have a real good sense of how well his repertoire works with their stadium, with their ballpark, with their pitching coordinators who are going to sort of create a game plan from him, like Zach Bove and Brian Sweeney and things like that. And so they feel like they have a good sense of what Michael Wacha is, and it just adds an element of stability for them, I feel like. Mike, it's going to have some ramifications. What do you think this means for the rest of the rotation?
I think the easiest thing to say is that it increases the likelihood that Brady Singer is traded, because you've now locked down that third spot, and maybe you feel like you have a guy or two who can fill in spot 4 and 5. You know, Brady Singer's got more value now than he probably ever will, or than he ever has, at least. And so coming off of his best year, he's going to be done with arbitration after next year. And so, yeah, I think
No, he's got 2 more years.
2 more years after this year, or after?
No.
Wow.
No, he'll have
years. Okay.
He'll have 2025 and 2026 in arbitration, and then he'll be a free agent.
Oh, okay. So I thought he was one less than that. My bad. Still, I think that adds value to him. And so I think that really bumps up those chances that you see Singer going someplace. But it also does what I said before. It cements some consistency into your starting rotation.
Yeah. I think assuming Singer isn't traded, if we assume that Singer isn't traded, and that assumption is only made on the fact that, like, the odds are heavily against any one trade ever happening, like, because of what it takes for trades to come together, the odds are sort of always stacked against any one trade happening. So if we assume that Singer isn't traded, what the Michael Wacha deal does is it provides a sense of stability for the Royals, because beyond Singer, so if you say the rotation is Reagans, Lugo, Singer, Wacha, beyond that is a whole bunch of uncertainty. Not necessarily a lack of talent, right? Or even to some degree a lack of performance. There are guys down there who have performed a little bit, but they're
Alec Marsh had a great first half of the year last year.
Alec Marsh had a great first half. Michael Lorenzen has been very good at times. Chris Bubic has been good at times. But again, there's uncertainty with those guys. With Bubic, it's injury. With Marsh, can he stay consistent? With Lorenzen, can he be successful despite the strikeouts are not like very high, you know? And so there are a lot of questions, like with Kyle Wright. Is he going to come back off injury and be okay? There's a lot of uncertainty beyond those first 4. So if Singer isn't traded, what they get by keeping Wacha is they avoid some of that uncertainty and get a little bit more certainty, or as certain as any starting pitching situation can be, right? Like, we've seen so many teams just have their rotations decimated by injury. That's always a possibility for whatever team you have. I mean, that's just how pitching works in modern baseball. Mike, JJ has said that they like the rotation now. He came out with a statement right after the Wacha deal where he was talking. He was essentially like, hey, we're happy with a rotation of Reagans, Lugo, Singer, and Wacha. And he gave an indication, at least, that he wasn't interested in mixing that up. But we're now hearing rumors that Brady Singer may be on the trading block. What do you put the likelihood of Singer being traded at?
Yes, and if you're wondering to read more into that, MLB Trade Rumor had a great article on this. I think it's at about 60%. I would put it slightly better than a coin flip.
Damn,
that's pretty high. I know. And you notice my next note there, which might be a little higher than some. Okay. That's pretty high, but it's for the reasons that I stated earlier. I think if you want to get offensive consistency in this lineup, you have to go out there and get at least 2 bats. And I just don't think that they're going to go out and spend the money in free agency to get multiple bats and then possibly even sign another starter, even if you keep Singer, because you don't know. They might want to do that. Okay. There is still that 5th spot, and I don't know how certain you are about anybody who is going to fill it. And so, or maybe some more bullpen pieces. We've seen some unsteadiness there too. So I just thought like, okay, you have a chance now to strike while the iron's hot, and I think this front office is a little bit different than the past ones. I think he ends up getting dealt because of some of the more strategic things that dealing a guy in his last year or 2 of arbitration can bring.
I mean, that's a good reasoning for why he would get traded, but I still think that that's way too high, just because so many things are always stacked against this happening, right? So, and for those of you who are curious, who are like, oh, why would they trade Singer? He did well last year. He's still cheap. He's not a free agent yet, blah, blah, blah. Let me explain to you why Singer is the trade candidate that everyone is looking at as a potential, okay? He is into his 2nd year of arbitration, which means that he's going to get a significant pay increase. If they want to get any value for him before he hits free agency, they need to trade him now before he's 1, super expensive in arbitration, and 2, while he still has some years of control that teams can value in that trade, right? And so it's very common for guys, especially pitchers, to get traded at this point because there are some teams that don't want to give pitchers extensions like Singer. You know what I'm saying? Like They don't want to give guys big time extensions into free agency years because maybe a guy like Singer, they're just not sold on his long-term ability or long-term potential.
How much of a track record does he have?
Right. He has a little bit of a track record.
A little bit.
Not so
enough to have value on the trade market, but one that you might still worry about.
Exactly. So let me just put it this way. Like Max Fried didn't get an extension from the Braves. He's just going to be a free agent. And so there are a lot of teams who, even with better pitchers than Singer, haven't really offered their pitchers money into free agency because they don't want to invest in the most highly injured position in baseball. So they know that we would rather create a pitching factory that pumps out young pitchers. We trade off of that talent and we don't ever invest in that big time thing that gets hurt all the time, right? Because that's really risky. There's a lot of downside to that. And so that's why people are looking at Singer as like, oh, this is the one guy who has the most highest trade value of any of the Royals players who might actually get traded. Okay. And so that's why a lot of people I'm putting it about 30%, which is still high for any one trade, right? But, I just don't, I think it's also just more likely than not that they decide to play it safe and keep Singer. My ear itches. Okay.
You're welcome, YouTube crowd. All the glamour. You get the behind the scenes here.
Royals Weekly is brought to you by All In Physical Therapy. You already know that All In Physical Therapy turned our mother into an Olympic decathlete. What you don't know, though, is that Mom loved her experience there because of the personal attention she got from Tommy and the staff at All In. They guarantee a personalized, one-on-one experience to suit the needs of patients recovering from total joint surgeries, sports injuries, or any kind of injury or pain.
I got to get Tommy and the gang to help me out with my coracoid process.
For those of you who don't know what that is, Mike is roughly pointing to his coracoid process.
It's in your shoulder. It's in your shoulder.
It is in your shoulder.
All In Physical Therapy. I got 2 old man shoulders.
Yeah, he does. All In Physical Therapy is owned and operated by Tommy Freebert with locations in Blue Springs, Lee Summit, and Belton. But most importantly, they're in network for nearly all insurance providers.
That's good because I hear coracoid process work, not cheap.
It's not. I hear that conversation as well. That's all over the place. Mm-hmm. If you're a high school athlete recovering from injury or someone bouncing back with a brand new hip or knee, check out the best physical therapy in the KC Metro at allin-pt.com. That's ALLIN-pt.com. Or give them a call at 816-427-5300. That's 816-427-5300. So much of what the Royals are hoping to do this offseason hinges on one player. A guy the front office has to make a decision about. That guy is Brady Singer. Ken Rosenthal reported the other day that the Royals are in early talks about trading Singer to the Reds for Jonathan India. He's a second baseman if you don't know who he is. Will anything ever come of that? Probably not. But it does make it even more clear that Singer is the team's most valuable trade chip if they choose to see him as such. Mike, we got to talk about Singer because he represents a sort of fork in the road for the Royals to me this offseason. One path down that is super aggressive. That's trading Singer. That's super aggressive because of all the things we talked about in the last segment. If you trade him, you introduce a lot more uncertainty into your starting rotation. The other path is a little less aggressive. That's just keeping him, going for same outcomes in the rotation that he had last year. What are your thoughts on where the Royals should go with those two paths?
So I'm all for aggression, especially for a small market team. I would trade him. If you can find someone that you feel like makes your offense more consistent. Now, and that's another thing that goes against trades that we haven't mentioned. Sometimes there's just not that many guys that fit what you have in value and what you need. Like those things aren't always meshing. So you may have a pool of 5 guys that you actually want to fix the issues you have, and none of those guys meet the value of your guy. I mean, that's just...
And this is key for Singer because what they're looking for is major league talent back. So essentially that negates any team that would want to pay for Singer in prospects. The Royals aren't looking for prospects. They want somebody who can help with their major league team. So essentially they have to find a team that has some other player in basically the same position as Brady Singer, right? Because if not, it's going to be real tough to find a match, right? There's not a lot of teams that are sellers in December. Like they're trying to make their teams better to compete next year. And so you got to find a team that, one, thinks it has a surplus in a certain place, and two, some of that surplus is about to hit free agency or a couple years away or something like that. Because otherwise, you're going to have a tough time finding the right match.
Yeah, because if they're a productive member of their lineup, they're either going to want to re-sign them or they're going to be in that situation like you just said. It's not really a place that they need it or something like they're competing, so it's just, it's tough. It's tough to thread that needle, but I think you have to find somebody who provides you some offensive consistency. And then if you do, if that perfect match happens, pull the trigger. I would pull the trigger because I believe in Noah Cameron. I think Noah Cameron can fill one of those 2 starter spots. Then it's just about finding one of the other guys. And it could be somebody like a Michael Lorenzen. Did I say it right?
Yep. That's like the first time you've ever said it right.
Lorenzen. If they can find another guy like that can provide you like kind of a minimum amount of innings that he goes 5 and then you get him out, but is consistent, I'll take it.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I do acknowledge that I am more of a risk taker than some people are. Oddly, I'm more of a risk taker than you are. And
yep.
You're the one who's like first taking this risk here.
I'm like, get out.
Yeah.
Let me help you pack your shit, man.
But I would actually take this as well. And it's not just because I believe in Noah Cameron. I do, but it's also because I believe in the notion of making it a numbers game. So if they trade Singer, they essentially have 2 spots to fill and like 5 or 6 guys to fill them. And I'm like, you can find 2 quality starters in those 5 or 6 guys, given the talent that you have in Brian Sweeney and Zach Bove. And so some combination of Noah Cameron, Daniel Lynch, Chris Bubich, Kyle Wright, Alec Marsh, who am I missing? Michael Lorenzen, who they haven't signed again. And so technically they wouldn't get him. He might be a free agent. Who knows? But
yeah. Well, I mean, but there's a lot of other guys too. There's Bolin. I mean, it can be a competition.
Bolin, there's Champlain. There's other guys. But also, they could also go out and like minor league sign somebody if they want to do that. But I think ultimately with those 5 guys, maybe a 6th if they add somebody else, or if you count Bolin or something like that, you can find 2 guys who can give you what you need, right? And if something tragic happens, like you get 2 or 3 injuries in your rotation to your top 3 guys, guess what? The season wasn't going to work out anyway. And so, you might as well just, deal with it, is my mind. Mike, what kind of value do you think the Royals should demand in return for Singer if they do choose to trade him?
Yeah, I just said I think the kind of player you're looking for is someone to provide offensive consistency. I think that's probably through on base ability, which this lineup has lacked since I've been a Royals fan, and
since forever.
So I think if you can find that type of player, I think you're looking somewhere in the range of a 110 to a 115 weighted runs created plus, probably from last year, or at least has shown the ability to be that player, if that makes sense. I think if you can do that, and they're never going to want to take a big hit defensively, so the person probably plays a competent third base, left field. Jonathan India is a second baseman. That's one of the questions that I kind of have that we'll talk about in a minute. Where would he play? But yeah, I get that 110, 115 feeling for weighted runs created plus. You're not going to get a superstar, but he's got to lengthen your lineup.
Yeah, that's about right in my mind too. I think if we're thinking about what that player needs to look like, well, first off, if this were my team, and this is going to sound a little bit crazy, but I would be open to accepting non-major league talent for Brady Singer. I would be open to accepting prospects for Brady Singer. It sounds crazy, but here's the thing. When you trade Brady Singer, even if you're just getting prospects back, now not only have you gotten those prospects, but you've also saved the, what, $8, $9, $10 million he's going to be making next year. And you can go spend that on
that's
some
not
offense,
a bad
right?
idea.
And so
I thought you were drinking the goof juice or something, because that sounds pretty kooky. But no, that makes sense when you consider the extra added value of saving the money, because that turns you. I mean, we paid, what did we pay? Lorenzen didn't cost that,
No,
last
Lorenzen
year
didn't cost that much.
and so yeah, you can go find somebody who can give you $5.
And there are way more options out on the. Now, I don't love this free agent hitting class at all, but there are way more options out there than finding guys at the major league level who teams are interested in trading. There might be 5 of those guys who would maybe somewhat approximate Singer's value. There are going to be 30 guys you could sign, offensive options you could sign in free agency. And so I would be okay with doing that. But you're right. In terms of the offensive profile or the profile of the type of player we should be looking for in return, first off, I think you and I are in universal agreement that it's an offensive player, that's a position player.
Yeah.
And I think looking at on-base ability, looking for the ability to be a consistent offensive force, I think is really what they're looking for here. Defense, I think the priority would be corner outfield, honestly. Then maybe third base, and then maybe some other types of platoons and things like that. But those are sort of the profile I think that they're looking at. Mike, you brought up India. He was the one named in those rumors. Do you like the idea of Singer for India?
Well, for those of you who don't know, Jonathan India, high draft pick out of Vanderbilt, right?
Oh yeah, no, Florida.
Florida. Yeah, you're right. It's Florida. Third baseman there. Played some third base early in his career for the Reds. Had a
Not
good
for the
season.
Reds, in the minor leagues. He's never played third base in Major League Baseball.
Oh, I thought he did. But he had a pretty good rookie year, didn't he, for the Reds?
Yes.
And then kind of had some struggles, and then had a solid year last year. So he had some injury issues too, if I'm not mistaken. Hamstring, I think. But anyway, I don't love it. I don't love him as that value, because there is some volatility in his major league background. He does provide some on-base ability, which I like, but there's some serious questions about his ability to produce runs, home runs, to hit for power in any sort of meaningful way. And his defense is adequate at second base, but it's second base. And Michael Massey's at second base. So is he now splitting with Massey? It feels like Garcia's maybe the better guy to replace if you're going to do that, to me. And so I don't know. He's not a square peg in a round hole, but he's an oval one or something like that. Just doesn't quite fit for me.
Mike was Oscar Wilde in a previous life, a real poet.
I was. A real poet.
And so, yeah.
David Foster Wallace wants my words.
Yes. I think I put this out on Twitter earlier today, but if it was Singer for India, I would want another player in addition to India. I would want like a prospect in addition to India, because I think Singer is worth more than India. I think Singer has a more extensive major league track record than India does. I think Singer plays a pitcher or a position that's in higher demand than India is. A second base only player, which is all India is, because his arm is one of the weakest in Major League Baseball. Very weak. And so he can't really play. He might be able to play left field, but you would just know that your left fielder has no arm, which in the biggest outfield in baseball is a little tricky at the very least. He does have the speed to play left field. He's a pretty fast player, but just not much of a throwing arm on him. And so I do love the on base
slugged
ability.
under
That's
400
really good.
last year.
Slugged under 400, yeah. So he's basically Michael Garcia, but with way better on base ability.
Yeah.
Way better on base ability. And so he's right-handed. Some people have floated the notion that maybe he's a platoon split for Michael Massey. The problem is India has no actual platoon split over the course of his career. He's 107 weighted runs created plus against righties and lefties. And so you really think of him as more of an everyday player who's going to be, not the best player on your roster, but could hit 6th or 7th for you and be a contributor, But the question is, he's not a positional fit. He has some deficiencies offensively. You really wonder about how that might look. Mike, if the Royals do trade Singer, what do you think they will do to fill his spot in the rotation?
Well, we kind of mentioned this, but I think it'll be internal competition. I think they will for sure do that. Maybe if you get 1 or 2 injuries in there or something, they go out and sign a vet late. But I think they're going to start with internal competition and see, see if they can land on 2 guys. Like I said, I like Noah Cameron. Alec Marsh has done it a little bit already, Now, if you do Marsh, you kind of maybe lose his ability in the bullpen, but no big deal. Like maybe they don't like him in the bullpen. I don't know. But even if Bubic has to come and do it, I think that's, you can fix the bullpen hole that he leaves better with what's his name coming back from injury, Harvey coming back from injury. Mm-hmm. So, that's I think they're going to be their first option is internal.
Yeah, with all those guys, there's plenty of competition. I hope Noah Cameron gets a real chance for that because, man, he pitched really well in AAA. But if he's not really in the front running, you still got guys who looked pretty good last year. Like Daniel Lynch started to look stronger in the second half. You still have Chris Bubic, who looked great in the bullpen and has looked good as a starter previously. You still have Kyle Wright coming off injury, who, he didn't play last year, but the year before that, he was quite good in the rotation for the Braves. And so you still have lots of options, I think. And so that's why I don't think you worry too much about trading Brady Singer. Mike, last question of this segment. If the Royals choose to play it more passive, let's consider the other road, the play it safe road and keep Brady Singer. What sort of ramifications do you think that has for the team as a whole?
Well, I think there's some risk in that. It seems like the safer option because you think you know what you have from last year, but there is some risk for regression from Singer. The year before last year, he had like a 5.5 ERA. Okay. Before last year, he had half a season of major league success. And so, yeah, it's not unheard of it's not without risk to keep him. And then, like I said earlier, filling that hole in your lineup that I think your ability to build the lineup is going to be a lot less if you can't trade for something with Brady Singer.
Yeah, he is your big trade chip. And if like the Royals have said, they have 2 holes to fill in the lineup, middle of the lineup bat and a leadoff hitter, where's it going to come from? It can't all be money.
The free agent class is not super strong in the strata that the Royals will be looking for.
No,
guys,
no. They can't. They're not going to go out and spend for Juan Soto, and so it's going to be tougher than that.
Or even like a Bregman. Like they're not going out and getting Bregman to play third for them.
I don't want them to get Bregman.
I don't necessarily either, but he may come with a price tag they don't want to look at either.
I think the fall is about to come for Bregman.
You do?
Market.
Like I'm trying to think of that third baseman. The same thing happened to him a few years ago.
Look at the bat speed data for Bregman in the last half of the
Troy
season.
Gloss.
Took a deep nosedive last year. Anyway, I think that I agree with you for the most part. I think we should consider the risk of keeping a Singer because there is risk associated with his. And Singer, you have to look at the player himself specifically. We've noted Singer's difficulty in developing additional pitches. We've noted that he essentially has 2, and he kind of throws the 4-seam, and that helped him this year, but really has nothing that can run away from left-handers.
That waned as well as the year went on.
Yeah, and nothing that can run away from left-handers, and that's going to always be a problem for him if he doesn't develop the changeup better or something something to handle the left-handers. Because the danger with his slider is what happens if I accidentally get one down and in, but the guy kind of anticipated it then it's a home run, right? Like
Every time.
And so, there are questions there about what Singer will provide if he stays in the rotation. Royals Weekly is brought to you by Eric Oxer of West USA Realty. Phoenix has all of our favorite things: year-round golf, year-round baseball, and Eric Oxer of West USA Realty. Whether you want to buy your dream retirement home or just stay a while and catch spring training, Eric can help you find the perfect house. We've known him for 30 years and trust him far more than we even trust each other.
I like to gaslight Mark about certain gambling-based decisions to make it seem like I know what I'm doing, when in fact he is far inferior. He's trying to set me up, folks, again. He always
Tell him the story from today, Mike. Tell him about
All right,
how
I had a little bit of a rough day wagering on football, and Mark did okay.
Mark crushed it.
I built a gambling empire, and
that's not the funny part.
I had 2 good weeks.
That's not the funny part. The funny part is I picked 2 winners today, 2 unders, and Mike has the audacity to text me, "It hasn't been that bad. I picked those 2 unders that won," and I'm like, "I picked those!" And then I showed him the receipts of that. He's like, "Oh, I could have swore I picked those." That's what he's been doing to me.
Both of them. That's why I thought I picked them. My bad.
Let's get back to
usually the one winning. Let's
get back to this ad. Eric does long-term rentals for the snowbird crowd and home sales and purchases for those who want to stay a while longer. Are you a baseball player or parent who needs a place in the Phoenix area? Eric will find you a perfect spot fast. You want to spend your day shanking golf balls in the great beyond? Eric knows the golf scene like Mike knows his way around a Wendy's Baconator. Find Eric online at ericoxer.com if you can figure out how to spell his name. ERICKAUXIER.com. Or just shoot him a text at 480-383-9745. That's 480-383-9745. Even if you're just curious about what he can do for you, he's 100% no pressure, one of the best people we know.
And he was a finalist to play J. Robert Oppenheimer in the Oppenheimer sequel, Oppenheimer 2, The Oppenheimering. How the hell did I get through that?
I wrote that just so you'd screw it up.
I didn't.
You didn't.
I nailed it.
Credit to you. You nailed it.
Jeez, that was tough. Too many vowels in those names, people.
We'll end this week's episode like we end every episode with the Just About Outside segment, where we talk about something interesting to us outside the world of baseball. Mike, we haven't done this for a month. You probably got a whole list of things saved up to talk about.
It actually took me. My life is so boring. It took me quite a while to think of this one. I was
let's hear what you
new? Got. Nothing. I did have to have a tree cut out of my front yard. Okay, because it died. It got this insect thing that's going around killing ash trees, and so I did the whole thing. You call around to a bunch of places, and I got a bid from a local person here in the G Hood. And it was so weird. So I wanted to talk. I'm not going to pub them or anything because they don't pay us, but it was just weird. I guess it was good service. I guess it was, but they did some things. Like she just texts with me. Mm-hmm. This is just a company that she's texting me like back and forth.
Yeah.
Hey, it's this much money. And I never even I never saw anybody with a chainsaw. The only person I dealt with was her because she came to my house to collect the payment. My tree was gone one day. Oh yeah. She also didn't tell me when my appointment was. She just texted me the morning they were coming to my house to cut down a tree. She's like, hey, they'll be there in 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, when will they be done? She's like, before you get home from work. Okay.
All right.
It's like, all right.
Glad you know my work schedule.
I just live right around the corner. So I walked over to get this job. Okay. Cool.
She's like, I'm your neighbor, actually.
She is apparently roughly my neighbor. And so, yeah, it was weird, but I do applaud them. I mean, it was super efficient, and it made me think man, what if more people were just efficient like this? It was, bam, here's your information. I just texted it right to you. I just came and picked up your payment by hand. And zip, zip, zoom, done. 2 days, I had the tree out of my yard. That's a gigantic tree.
It's not gigantic. It's big, but it's not gigantic.
It was pretty damn big. But anyway.
But I've cut down bigger trees than that myself.
I know. You love to tell the story of the one time you were almost a man.
I'm basically a lumberjack.
But no, it was really cool to kind of do business that way, and I like to give the local companies or the family-owned companies an opportunity usually to bid when I get stuff done, because I had my other 2 bids were from huge chain companies, and they were not only the cheapest, they were extremely efficient. So
yeah. I got the same treatment. I had a very large tree taken out back in the back of my house. You saw it at one point.
Oh yeah.
Super efficient. I mean, it was great. It was great. They were great at it. So yeah, and I've had that done by a couple tree companies. Cool. I'm glad you got that tree down. I mean, you should. When I take trees down, I then donate some money to these organizations that plant trees because I feel bad about taking a tree down, and so
Oh yeah.
you should do that too. Float them $5 and it'll plants like 10 trees or something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
easy.
yeah.
No problem.
I'm talking about a show that I started watching in the last month, and I've now I shouldn't say finished because I think they're making more seasons, but I've caught up. There's only 2 seasons out right now. It's on Netflix. It's called Blue Eye Samurai, and it's an animated show, but it's
I can
definitely
already
not
tell
for
this is the nerdiest shit in the world.
it is definitely not for children. Okay, I'm just throwing this out here. It is definitely not for children. Okay, anybody who listens
I'll
to
never
this,
see it.
do not show your kids Blue Eye Samurai. But if you're interested in fun stories, it's a great story. The animation is brilliant and beautiful. It's about a person who is born into like an era of Japan where there are no white people allowed in the whole country. And there's like 4 white people in the entire country when she's born, and she comes out half white. And so she's kind of ostracized, you know?
Some dude's in trouble.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, she
Got a Mamma Mia situation going.
Yeah, she develops except I think Mamma Mia, but a lot more swordplay and death, right? Like, so she becomes like this fierce badass and seeks out the men who essentially made her this way, and then she's going to kill him, basically. And so, but it is really, really good. The writing is brilliant.
Heartwarming.
It's not heartwarming at all. I'm telling you, yes, it is animated, but it has no whimsical. No, it's just it's violent, and there's a ton of nudity and sex, and it's just
what the heck? It's
a great show. It's really great. It has kind
like
of
Game of Thrones,
actually kind
for
of
animated Japan.
Yeah, it's kind of like Game of Thrones in
Mhm.
terms of its tone and style and that sort of stuff. And so, if you're interested, you need a new show to watch, Netflix, Blue Eye Samurai. I highly recommend. That's all we have for you. Thanks for joining us here at Royals Weekly, presented by Bet Online. We really appreciate it. We'll be back in roughly a month. If something special happens, maybe we'll come back sooner than that. But if you're interested in weekly episodes from us, go ahead and subscribe to the Royals Weekly Substack. Become a paid subscriber there. You get a weekly episode on Thursday. But until then, about a month, right? Until then, be good to each other.
And go Royals.